Hey guys, welcome back to the stuff. This week I am putting up some plasterboard in my spare room, which I'm turning into a home office. I'm doing that on my own, and I'm also doing it without a stud finder. So if you like the sound of that, stick around and we'll get to it. Remember, while this intro is on, drop me a like and subscribe to my channel. So as mentioned, plasterboarding today. I'm renovating my home office. It's one of the last rooms in the house that I'm doing. So I'm putting up some plasterboard. I'm doing that on my own. So I'll be showing you a few tips and tricks that I use in order to get plasterboard on the ceiling and on the walls while I'm working on my own. And I'm also going to show you how I'm finding some studs without a stud finder. Because I don't have one. But can't do that in here, so let's pop over to the spare room. So this is the wall that I am plasterboarding today. You can see it's still got wallpaper on it. And the reason it's still got wallpaper on it is because I'm not going to take it off. It's a partition wall. The previous owners have put wallpaper onto plasterboard instead of plastering it, which renders the plaster behind useless, or the plasterboard useless, and also means that stripping it off is a nightmare. So I'm just going to cover that over. I'm also doing the ceiling, and the reason I'm plasterboarding the ceiling again is because they'd had polystyrene tiles on it previously, and it's left a lot of glue and residue, which is terrible to take off. And also the paint which they put on is peeling in a lot of places, which means it won't hold a plaster, so plasterboarding that as well. So looking at this wall then, obviously I'm going to be putting screws through my plasterboard into this wall, and somewhere behind here there are studs. So you can hear there's probably one somewhere around there, but that is not ideal. I don't have a stud finder, so just show you three quick ways of finding the stud. And then hopefully that'll work. First tip is to take off a socket. So removing a socket in a plasterboard wall reveals a cavity behind. You can just about see that there is a stud. So it's about there on my wall, and hopefully what that means is there's one at the end there, one there, and then I'd hope that they've measured 400 across, because that's how many, that's the sort of standard centres. But good news is I found one which is behind here, so that is the first way in which you can find a stud. Same in the ceiling, usually where the two screws, or the screw that's been holding up your light fixing, that'll be going straight into a stud, and then you can just measure out in the same way. Second way, and slightly more agricultural, is to take your skirting boards off. Now, as you can see, I've taken mine off. If you weren't going to do this anyway, this isn't something I'd recommend. But what you can see when I take the skirting boards off is that the board is not going to put all the way down to the floor, so it's revealed the stud in the stud wall. So that's easy for me. I can just mark all the way up in a straight line, providing they put that on vertically, which I hope they have. And that is another way to find the studs. And then the final way, this is a technique I learned off of another YouTuber called The Ultimate Handyman, is to buy yourself some neodymium magnets. They don't have to look like this, but these are the ones that seem to work quite well for me. And then just on your wall, where you think your stud might be, the magnet will attract to the screw head. So what you can do is measure out where you think roughly it is, and then all I need to do then is find another one. So that is where my stud is, and then I can mark a line between those two and go all the way up, and that's where my stud is. So that is a number of ways that you can find your studs without a stud finder. First thing I've got to do on this job is get all the plasterboard upstairs. This isn't easy on your own. They are quite big sheets. They're not light and not very manoeuvrable. So here I am struggling up the stairs with a couple of sheets of plasterboard. Luckily for me, it's only 5 sheets because it's quite a small room. Okay, so tools I'm going to be using today are some plasterboard fixings or some drywall screws. I've got 50mm long ones because I'm going through old plasterboard into the studs, so I need something that will go through both layers of plasterboard that I've got and give me a good fixing into the stud. I've obviously got my battery drills, got an impact one there, and just my normal drill driver, just in case I decide to use both. I've got a couple of small screwdrivers for taking off electrical sockets and light fittings. I've got a long level which I'm going to be using as a straight edge as well. I've got a standing knife which I'll be using to do the cutting of the plasterboard, and a couple of bits of wood, and I'll show you what I'm going to use those for in a bit. And obviously I've also got some sheets of plasterboard. This is 12mm plasterboards, full sheets, 1.2 by 2.4 meters. And that is all of the tools I'm going to be using today. So I think I'm about ready to put my first bit of plasterboard on the ceiling. I'm going to go for the ceiling first because that's the hardest, and by the time I get to the walls I'll probably be puffed out. So don't want to be lifting on the ceiling later. That's probably my only reason for doing it. What I've got is on the ceiling, you can just about see probably a pencil mark, which is where my joists are running, and I've marked those all the way along. I've also got these 2 pieces of wood. Because I'm lifting this up on my own, I've stuck these on the wall or screwed them onto the joists, the stud work, sorry, in the wall, and they're about 20mm below the ceiling, which means what I'll do is offer the plasterboard in on there. That'll hold it up one end. I'll then climb a ladder the other end, and hopefully I'll be able to screw it in. That's the plan anyway, so hopefully that'll all go well. If we just take a look at the board, I'm putting a full sheet up in one go. What I've done on the board, if you can make that out, is I have put pencil marks on where the joists will align with the board. So I've measured off the edge to where the joists are going to go, and that then is where I'm going to put the screws in. So let's give this a go. When lifting the plasterboard onto the ceiling, just be careful because, like I said before, they are quite big sheets, can be quite heavy. Obviously, there are other methods that you can use. You can use props, or maybe some, I've seen some hook and bar combinations, but I'm just using the blocks of wood. I guess it's like a prop, but fixed into my battens. If you don't have battens, or you've got a solid wall, you will need to prop it at some point in order to get it up if you're working on your own. And with the plasterboard fixings, I'm just driving those in roughly every 150 to 200mm apart along the joists, and that should hold my plasterboard in place. If you've got to make any cuts to your plasterboard, I'm just using a Stanley knife and a straight edge, and all you do is score down the line of where you want to cut it, and then it should just snap away, and then you can just cut the paper behind, and that's it really, simple as that. Okay, so that's the first board on the ceiling. I've taken the battens off the wall there that was holding it up. That went up pretty well. Now it's time to get the one on the wall. I'm going in the opposite direction on the wall, so that's gone that way. So I'm going to drop them down this way so that the joins don't align. And again, I've just put a batten at the bottom there just to stand the board on while I screw it in. So yeah, let's get the first board on. Putting the plasterboard on the wall is much easier than doing it on the ceiling because I don't have to lift it above my head, but essentially just dropping it on the batten that I put on the wall. You could just rest this on the floor and put one smaller piece at the top. However, I didn't want two joins at the top. I think it's probably less prone to cracking along those joins if I put them at the bottom, or at least that's what I think anyway. And then I can just screw them into where I've marked the stud work, and that is it. And that is how I put plasterboard up on my own. So we have it. That's my spare room plasterboarded, ready for plastering. I'll show you that in a later video. But hopefully you've picked up something useful, or if not, you enjoyed me struggling up the stairs. Either way, hope you got something out of it. What's left for me to do is celebrate with a beer, and I've got a more beer stout. It's just called stout. Can confirm, stout. Anyway, you stay safe, get some stuff done.